Everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are going to see an interesting topic, which is working with variables, arrays, and hash tables. So basically, variables are an essential component in the scripting. So in this module, we will learn how to work with variables, arrays, and hash tables. So in this module, we will see these topics, assigning a value to a variable, and then we'll see how to manipulate variables, and then we'll see how to manipulate arrays and hash tables. Okay, next in lesson 1, we'll see using variables. So in this lesson, we will learn about variables and some of the rules on how to use those variables, because this is very important to ensure that the data we store in the variable are in the correct format and it can be easily accessible. So when working with the variables, it is also important to name them appropriately, and we can assign them the right data type. So we can see some of the following objectives in this lesson, which is what are variables and variable naming, and then we'll explain how to assign a value to a variable, and describing the variable types, and how to assign the variable type. That's in the demonstration. Okay, first, what are variables? Basically, using the PowerShell pipeline, we can pass the data through the pipeline, and we can perform operations on it. But the main limitation of the pipeline is that the process flow, which only in one direction. So it is difficult to perform the complex operations. But using the variables, we can solve that problem. Basically, the variable store value and object in memory so that we can perform the complex and the repetitive operations on them. So we can see some of the things we can do with the variable. First, we can store the name of the log file that we are writing data to multiple times, and also we can drive and store the email address based on the name of the user account. And also the last one, these are just for an example, so we can achieve multiple things, like to calculate and store the date of the day 30 days prior to the current day. Using that, we can identify whether computer accounts have signed in during the last 30 days. As we know, the variable can contain numbers and string data type. It can also hold the object as well, because when a variable contain an object, we can access all the object characteristics. For example, let us take an consideration of Active Directory user object that is assigned to a variable, and all of the properties of the user account. So let's say user account is an object in this case, and once assigned that object into a variable, we can retrieve all the information using that variable. Okay, so for example, let us see a command that can list all the available variables. So let me just open the PowerShell. So let me run get dash child item variable. So this would list all the variables in the system or in the memory. We can also use the get dash variable to view the variables in the memory. Okay, so next we'll see variable naming. So a variable naming meaning, when we assign a value to the variable, we have to provide the uh, proper naming for the variable, because there will be we have to consider some of the following aspect. Like a good variable name is one that we can easy to understand, because when we create a variable name, we have to give that name which is something relevant to the value that we are going to store in that variable. For example, if a variable name that we are going to store the user account, so it could be, like we can use the variable name something like dollar user. And the other example, if we are going to store the log file in that variable, then we can, consider give the variable name as the dollar log file. And for example, if you're assigning the IP address, then something we can, give the variable name which is relevant to the value that's stored in the variable. In most cases, we can see the variable used with the dollar symbol, because the dollar symbol is not part of the variable, but it is the indicator for the PowerShell, which is the variable, so that the PowerShell will understand this is the variable. For example, dollar user is a variable name. Okay, so but we are assigning the variable name with the dollar user, but the actual variable name is user, and the dollar symbol that helps the PowerShell to identify it's a variable. So in this example, if the dollar log file is the variable that we declare, but the actual variable name would be log file. So the dollar considered for the PowerShell to identify this log file is the variable. And the other aspects are like when we give the variable name, it is typically better to limit with the alphanumeric characters, which is letters and numbers, because when we include some special characters or spaces, it becomes more confusing for using it. We can also, give the space in the variable name. So for that, we need to enclose that variable name with the braces. Okay, if you are using space, we can use dollar and the open brace log space file. Okay, so we can consider, in this way for the variable name, if you are going to give the space in that. So variable names are not case sensitive. We can also, create a variable name with user. We can also create in the small case user. So both can be interchangeable. But for better readability, the common, naming convention is to use lowercase letter, so that will not get any confused. And we can also use the capitalize for the first letter of the word in the variable. For example, if you're typing log file, we can use log file, something like that, because the capitalization of the first word is optional depending on the situation and the preference. We can also type this as the log file. So here in this case, we don't need to provide any special characters like hyphen or underscore for the better readability. So using the capital letter, which act as the separator between the two words, and which can make the variable name more readable without using the any special characters, hyphens or underscore. Okay, next we'll see assigning a value to the variable. So basically we will be using the standard mathematical operators when working with the variable values, which is the equals and the plus and the minus, which are we are already familiar with it. So let us see an example to assign the value. I'm just clearing the screen. Okay, so to assign a value to the variable, we can use the equal to operator in the variable. So for example, I'm just typing num1 equal 10. So here I have assigned the number 10 to this variable num1, and also log file equal c:/logs/log.txt. I'm assigning the log path to the log file variable. So to get the to display this variable output, we can just enter the variable name. For example, num1, it would display the value which is assigned to this variable, that is number 10. And similarly, if I want to display the log file value, I can just put the log file. So in the variable, we can also put the command that is evaluated. For example, if I'm just using the user variable and assigning the value get dash add user administrator. Okay, so here I am putting the values into the variable by using the command that is evaluated. Okay, so in this case, of the the value of the command is placed into this variable. So similarly, we can also put, for example, service equal get dash service 32 time. So as I mentioned, to display the value of the variable, we can just type the variable name, for example, user, and it would display this command that hold the value. And if you wanted to display the value as part of the command, for example, we can use the write host. The location of the log file is log file. Okay, so here instead of this log file, it replaced with the value that's stored in the variable. So the location of the log file is, so it prints the output or the value that's stored in the log file variable. So write host is nothing but just to print the value that we type here. So to remove all the values from the variable, we can use the dollar $null. For example, we have assigned num1 equal to 10, right? So to remove that, we can just use the null. So this would clear the value assigned to the variable. So if I just type null num1, so it doesn't get any output. We can also use the clear variable and the variable name to clear the values in the variable. We can also use the mathematical operators with the variable. For example, dollar area equal length and width, and for example sum num1 plus dollar num2. And we can also use something like, for example, path equal to store the path. We can use folder plus file. To set the value for the variable, we can also use the set dash variable commandlet. When we use this commandlet, we do not have to specify the dollar symbol. For example, set dash variable, the variable name I'm going to use num1 and the value 5. And similarly, set variable name num2 and the value 15. Okay, so if I run a sum variable, okay, so if I rerun the sum variable again, which is num1 plus num2, and now if I run the sum, okay, it displays the value 15 plus 5. Okay, next we'll see the variable types. So all the variables are assigned a type. For example, string that stores the text in the variable, which includes special characters, and int32 data type that store the integers without the decimal numbers, and double, that data type store the numbers with decimal, and there is a date time data type that store the date and time, and the boolean type that would store the true or false. So basically the Windows PowerShell can automatically assign the data types based on the value that we assign to the variable. We can also specify the data type that's going to be the ambiguous. So in another case, like if we assign the integer value to the variable without the quotation, then it would consider as the integer. But in case if you're assigning the number including the uh, the double quotes, then it will be considered as the string data types. For example, let me assign a date to a variable called date equal get dash date. So if I type date, I'll get the date. So to find what type it is, I'm going to type date dot get type. So here it says date time type. And if I assign any value, for example, so if I type user, then I'll get the output to find the type. So this would be the string data type. Okay, so that's it in the lesson 1, and I'll see you in the next video for the lesson 2. Thank you.